I don't know why that was on the screen, but anyway.
Okay.
And here we are.
Peace, and here Greece is the boss, Grace Scott, with the boss lady, Ella, the biggest boss is Ricky Ross. I'm live from New York. She's live from London.
And also, you're tired because you've just been explaining to me that you've been up very, very late working on some music stuff.
We're editing the sound engineering. Yeah, you don't realize how important sound is until you have to. Even now,
Yeah.
sound is so important.
Who have you been working with, Scott?
I never heard of this artist, but 2 days ago we worked with this artist named Cranium. He's a reggae artist signed to Atlantic Records, and then working with A Boogie tonight at 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. And
Wow.
then under the roster as far as tour management, road management, me and my partner, brother Hassan Sharif, we got he's worked with Prince, Rihanna, DMX, Mary J. Blige, the Fugees. That's how I met him. And then now we got Jadakiss, some jazz artists. Because sometimes I work with people, that don't mean like I know their resume or their music. You have to know it during shows and stuff. I don't care about. I mean, not all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, really, essentially, when you're doing sound, I suppose you have to know what's going on, but you don't need to know too much more than what's going on in the moment, do you?
No. We need to know everything. We hire in damn, what the fuck? We hire in everything. We're hiring like pyro, security, production setup, stage setup. It's everything. But of course, during the show, you got to deal with lighting. You got to deal with the front house, which is people that deal with the crowd, what the crowd hears, and then there's somebody that has to deal with what the artist hears. And those are two separate people. They it's like the same job, but it's different things. Somebody, depending on how big the show is, sometimes like a big monitor, that's a whole thing. That's manually. Most people think like that's all like recorded or stuff. Most of the time, that's manual.
Oh, okay. I mean,
to keep changing it to what you want it to be.
And what's the crowd going to be like at the minute?
So this is going to be no crowd tonight. It's going to be a full production with a band. So we get in there at 5, and we're going to rehearse for 3 hours.
Right.
And the artist will get there. Everybody take a lunch break, dinner break, whatever, and then he's going to rehearse maybe for like an hour. We go over track lists, how many minutes, because once you start, you can't stop, and you gotta be on point. That's the whole thing with production. You can't. But with the entertainment industry, it's like you see like live shows, the Grammys and stuff, and you don't understand what it takes to make that run, especially on live TV. You can't make no mistakes, even though people do.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. If you're not, and say it again.
I said it must be a lot of pressure and a lot of stress on the day or on the night.
No, because we're used to it. But in this industry, it is not about school or nothing. That's why it's all about who you know, because you have to have reliable people. You will lose your job if you mess up. The network or whatever will fire you. You got to have TV tracks, and people got to know what they're really doing. So people can't just jump in the field like that unless you, like, in my opinion, know somebody that's gonna vouch for you. Like, no, he's good with the drums. He's good with the laptops or whatever. I don't know.
And that's where I suppose you're quite lucky, because you're well connected with quite a few top people, as you were saying earlier on, weren't you?
I mean, yeah. I mean, just I'm assuming like in your career, every industry has a circle and everybody know everybody. So if one time the artist, he hit us and he said, my friend is performing tonight in New York. I want to pop up. He really wanted 4 security guards that can have a license to carry. In New York State, you cannot carry a gun. You can only off-duty police can carry a gun. All right. So I don't personally know no off-duty cops. So what we did was we had to make some phone calls. And mind you, the show is like in 4 hours. So you're telling somebody, listen, this is the budget. Can you come to work now? Who's the artist? And then they always want to know all that, which I understand, because a lot of violence goes on in the music industry. So they don't want to be caught in at the end they security guards get scared too. They don't want to fight if they don't have to, especially because they don't know you.
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
no
it's
check is worth their
crazy
life.
because people go. I mean, I was watching something last night actually about the girl Christina Grimmie, who was at a book signing, and she was quite big on YouTube for a while. She just got shot, didn't she, by a fan?
Yeah, I think that was like 2-3 years ago or something like that.
Yeah,
Yes, and
I remember hearing about it then, but
yeah,
I didn't know much about it, and I just watched something last night. And it did happen to mention that as a moment, and I kind of felt a bit shocked by it because it's not the norm, is it? To just
it's not the one for a young girl, a young white girl to go through that. Hell no.
Yeah.
So that would have caught me off guard too if I was there. Like, what the hell? But
It's crazy, and that's why I suppose it brings us neatly on. You were saying about the security and because of the violence within that industry, and also it brings us neatly on to what we were going to talk about today, which is violence in general, particularly because through our messages and stuff, you've been talking about how violent America is right now.
Yep.
And explain a little bit from your perspective of what's going on.
In the state of New York?
Yeah, I mean, because that's where you're closest to, isn't it?
Well, okay, so I speak for America. All of America's going through it right now. The government, the Republicans and Democrats have been arguing about how much everybody's going to get. A lot of people never got their unemployment. A lot of people never got their stimulus check. So you got people out here starving. What else are they going to do? Now they taking, California is known for their home invasions. That's more of a West Coast thing with home invasions. But now New York is doing it. I mean, how do you do home invasions in apartments? But people are doing it, and they're running up in homes by like a pack of 20, and it is what it is right now. Murder has been up 400% in New York. Gun violence, everything. We have an Elise, but nothing for us compares to Chicago, where Chicago is like sometimes you're having 100 murders a day. With kids. These are kids from maybe 8 to 24. Because all the gang culture.
What's the at the moment? What's the draw? I mean, obviously, money and the lack of money is, and the evictions and everything is driving anger. But what do you think is? Where do you think the biggest problem is with the violence? I mean, what's really creating the problem? More so than it was before.
I think there are Black Americans that would say this all descends from slavery and stuff like that. I mean, I think in general, violence was invented by God or whatever for a purpose. It does have a purpose, Every animals, hurricanes, earthquakes, those are all violent, As far as just the human species in America, violence, in my opinion, is just based off of things that we think we need that we really don't need, but because we don't have these conversations. But at the end of the day, all you really need is water, air, shelter, and you could build your own shelter if you know how. And clothes on your back, and you could build your own clothes. Slaves did that. And nutrition from the earth. Veganism, you plant one seed. And you about to say something?
Well, only that I agree with that. However, I think the thing that's probably at the root of a lot of the violence in America in particular is probably the sense of injustice and probably the sense of, I mean, I don't know, to be honest, and I don't know the ins and outs. I only know a little bit about what's going on with the Trump situation. I heard, and I don't know if this is true because obviously the media warps things, but I heard that Trump was funding the courthouses to hire school halls in America to enable there to be more evictions instead of giving the money to people like you say an employment benefit to enable them to pay their rent. Is that true?
I didn't hear that, but it's so much going on as far as the news is concerned. But I will say that yes, the government has been corny. They have not been helping anybody. it is really disappointing how much the American government, how they've been acting. They acting like kids.
Yeah.
They don't care about anybody, but that's what I'm trying to tell us. We gotta care about if we care about ourselves and we do group economics, we don't need no government. Could be it, but anyway.
And interestingly, on that point, this seemed to have started from the perspective of the UK anyway, and maybe there'll be somebody else that'd be a bit more informed and educated on this than me. But from the perspective of what I've seen, it looks like the extra violence, especially in New York, perhaps, has come about because of the riots that were a month or two ago, on the back of the police brutality issue. And that seems to have, I don't know if this is correct, but it seems to have sparked a new wave of violence, not just in terms of, protest, but in terms of black on black violence as well. Is that correct?
It plays a role, but also this defunding the police. I think the police are trying to send a message because they have not been helping people at all. But I also I understand their side too. There's a lot of laws that have changed,
Yeah.
and it's hard for them to, let's say, if they truly want to do their job. Now everybody's pulling out a phone thinking they're not doing. All of them are not doing their job. Yeah. I've been beat up by the police 3 times, so I could speak from experience, but also know all police ain't bad police. I've been helped out by police as well. As far as like if some, I've had home invasions and stuff too, and they found the criminals. So I think we got to stop. It's not all police ain't bad, but it has become a us versus them, and I think the police set an example. They're just like, well, let everybody do them and see what human nature really is. Because I think, even in my personal opinion, I think even if there wasn't COVID and all this stuff, and the police said we were gonna fall back, yeah, then everybody's like, yo, we about to do us. We're gonna rape this person and do this person. That's why you need security, because people will violate and break rules or break.
So actually, if I'm right in what I'm hearing here, just to sort of understand that point of view, that actually, because there's been certainly a very sort of predictable time in terms of COVID and protests, yes, but from what you're saying, because of these extra rules and less money and all this kind of stuff, people are actually going, no, we don't want the rules, we want to do it our way. So it's almost like a revolution in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's just too much freedom out here, yo. People gotta understand, like, you can have freedom restrictions, but everybody is like playing a victim, in my opinion. Everybody is like, the police got their issues, blacks got their issues, Trump wants his issues, everybody got their damn issues, and just I mean, we should be all in this together, right? We're one country, right? United we stand, divided we fall. But I just think everybody just I don't know. I think America has lost its crown. It will lose its crown eventually. I say within the next 50 years, because China, and I'm saying it from a global perspective. We okay. Let's say COVID comes from China. If this story is true, China still makes everything. Your culture, our culture, we still don't know how to make things. And I think that's why they'll take money from all around the world at very low dollars. And when I travel, I see Chinese banks in every country. Every country, I've never not seen a Chinese bank. And I think, like, their government, and I'm telling everybody, like, yo, fuck America. Once their government feel like, yo, now we in position, go in. I don't care. They ain't gonna be no vote for this and all this stuff. And listen, all foreign parents are really strict. African and Haitian and Chinese. So I'm just saying, I know the discipline they gonna put on everybody. What you gonna do about it? Because you don't got bigger guns than them.
Yeah. So actually, you feel like in a certain amount of time anyway, China's going to take over. America will not be first. It will probably be second. It's fair to say second in the world.
I don't even think they'll be second.
Really?
Because they don't know how to make. I think the thing that gives you power is resources. One, right? And Africa is the most resourceful place. But if you don't know how to use and do things with those resources, you're still illiterate. And America is more of like, from what I'm seeing as I travel, we make things popular. we understand fame and the perception of fame, and turning a chair into a throne, even though a chair is nothing but it's just covered in velvet, and
Yeah.
then we know how to like make it just look prettier. But other than that, Americans can't say that we got any real skills. We don't. We lost really like Detroit. Detroit used to manufacture cars and stuff. They
Right.
still do, but what it once was, it ain't. Like these kids don't even own homes compared to our grandkids and our grandparents and stuff. Like that was their agenda, and America had that as a collective. America's not a collective now. Even look at COVID. There's 50 states, and we're all not on the same page.
Yeah.
Only New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are doing really good in COVID. But we're destroying the businesses because people can't go out to eat. They can't go. They can't go in places. But then the other states, COVID has spiked, but they're still having shows, appearances. They don't really, and like in states like Georgia and Florida, they don't care about the mask being put on or off. They don't give a shit about none of that. So, and they started school already.
Oh, really? Already?
And kids are back in school, and their government is just like F COVID, it don't exist, even though people are still dying from it there. But my point is just that we're not on the same page as a country. That is very bad. This will never
Yeah,
be.
because you need collaboration between the states in order to get that overall um,
I
joining
mean,
together, getting the result.
yeah.
But actually, what's really interesting is you mentioned Chicago there, and I know that there's been a lot of gang issues within Chicago already, but New York, certainly from personal experience, and I've been several times now, I always felt so safe in New York, but from our conversations, you were sort of like, no, it is crazy out here, and do you feel that that's just the lack of control and the lack of money, and you, like you say, that lack of collaboration in America? Do you feel like it's just brought out that sense of frustration, which is leading to anger, and then people are attacking each other?
Yeah, I mean, somebody tried to run up on me yesterday. I got away, but it's the norm now. And I was in Manhattan, close to Park Avenue. But it's just, I mean, New York is just going back to what it once was. They used to call it Deaf City back in the
Yeah.
70s.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's going back there?
Hell yeah, everything's closed. There's not much you can do in the city no more.
So on that, I mean, that's obviously driving, you know, behaviours that we haven't seen for a long, long time in New York. But let's look at the deeper issue there, because yes, there's a lot of uncertainty, and there's uncertainty in London. I mean, London's like a ghost town still. It's not what it was, and similarly, obviously, New York's the same. So we're all going through the same thing in the world at the same time. But what's interesting is there'll be certain areas, whether it be in New York, whether it be in London, where you'll see that gang crime is up. I guess what's interesting, especially covering the topic of violence, is what leads to that mentality. Is it trying to, from what you know, from what you've seen, especially because I know you pretty much study, the culture of everything. So I know that you've posted a lot about sort of certain mentalities around fighting and aggression and gangs and murder. What is it, do you think, that really drives a man in particular? We'll look at men, women are involved as well to some degree, but a man in particular to kill another man over something that's, let's face it, like I say a minute ago, the whole world's out of control. What really drives that behaviour to kill another man?
I want to play, I know it might sound weird, I want to play Violence Sweeps. I want to play Tony Robbins real quick.
Okay.
Because I actually recorded this for you.
Oh, good. Okay.
So violence meets four of the human needs, and that's why we've always had it. That's why ISIS exists. That's why people do the stupid things they do, is they do it to try to meet their needs. The biggest cause of violence, though, if you'll notice, is 95% of the time when it's a terrorist, it's a male. Why is that? Because in the human nervous system, if you're masculine, testosterone is probably large in you. Whether you're a man or woman, if you're more masculine, you got a lot of testosterone. Testosterone is about dominance. It's about significance. It's about domination. And the higher that is, the more they want it. If they look at their life and they're not dominating, and they get really frustrated, they'll do a final act. Men will die for significance. Women will die for love. Now, some men will.
Anyway.
It wasn't particularly clear. I could pick up some of it. Just in case it's not clean on the edit, just if you repeat a couple of things that Tony Robbins said there.
I'm sorry. So Tony Robbins was talking about how men will die for significance, and violence comes from dominance. Yeah. And if a man doesn't feel like he's dominating in his world, he wants to dominate you. You, meaning a woman, another person that's living successful. Yeah, so I think a large portion of our violence comes from poverty, comes from just throwing a bunch of people in one building like the projects or something. You know, not really. We're not really taught how to be emotionally fit for the world, you know. So
that's a big thing there. And do you know what? This is the bit that sorry to interject there, but you know, I heard him talk about testosterone as well. It's really important.
Yes, testosterone.
One thing that I wanted to really interject with there, and as a therapist, I see this all the time, and it's something that myself and a colleague of mine are hoping to talk about in schools locally in you know, in the UK, and to set up projects around this subject. You cannot treat boys and girls the same. You cannot treat, let's say, in the UK, you cannot treat boys in a private school the same way as a boy in an area that's certainly more poverty stricken, because their life experiences are going to be different. Not only that, but if you're looking at girls and boys, you know, whether they're in public school, private school, whatever, they're going to have a different set of, well, certainly the brain is wired differently for a start. So boys and girls have got completely different genetics when it comes to brains, but also the testosterone itself, it does drive a boy and a man to be dominant. And then, of course, there's a psychological need for significance and status and all of those things, as Tony Robbins was saying. So actually, I suppose, especially in America right now, as Trump is taking away, you know, the unemployment benefit, and let's face it, that's a massive issue because of, like you say, loads of businesses have had to close. People are now feeling like, okay, where's my significance? Without my money, where's my significance? I've got to fight for my money. And that means, you know, with that testosterone and that idea in mind, that means I've got to hurt you to get what I need so that I can be the more dominant one. It's become very animalistic, hasn't it?
Hell yeah. Yeah. But we also got to accept that violence is a part of life to some extent. Not that I agree with all forms of violence, but once you understand it for what it is, then you understand how to maneuver.
Now, I get that because, you know, if we look at, I'm going to bring two parts to that. I get that because if we look at the animal kingdom, especially, say, chimpanzees, and we're closest to them in DNA of all the animals, they are very violent, chimpanzees, and they can be really demonic in a lot of ways. You know, they will beat each other's brains in. And that's clearly the dominance and significance and the survival. But when we look at the emotions behind it, I suppose what I found interesting, because I work with a lot of particularly men and some women, but more so men that have beat on their wives or hurt their children, or, you know, been in prison and ended up having their head caved in, and, you know, all through fighting and all this kind of stuff. My belief is, and my understanding through the work that I've done for many years, is that we don't allow people to express what's really going on for them. We don't allow boys in particular to feel like they know we don't teach them to express. We don't allow them to have their needs met in the same way that girls are, because of the idea in society that men should be a certain way. And then, of course, we don't handle it well when they do commit that crime, that aggression. We don't try and help, we just try and punish them. So, you know, not only are they not getting that education from the point of view of being a young person, but they're not actually getting the education readily available all of the time once they've committed that crime. So the rehabilitation, and I know, like, when we look at the drug issue in different places across the world, if you look at Portugal, and I know you'll know this, if you look at Portugal, they've dealt with, they know exactly what they're doing, and it's all about rehabilitation and a sense of purpose. And of course, a sense of purpose brings a sense of significance. So that's what we need to really look at in terms of the violence situation as well, is men need to feel a sense of purpose, they need to feel a sense of significance, and they need to be rehabilitated properly if they become violent. And the problem is that a lot of this comes down to personality disorders as well. You know, what people learn in terms of how to deal with emotion from a very young age. So from your experience, do you feel in your life you learned how to express emotion and deal with emotion? How did you deal with that growing up?
Yeah. Well, first, everything you said is really good, and that's much needed, I think, for all of us to hear. You made it make sense.
Yeah.
Look, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s in the crack era. I grew up with a family that was very violent. They murdered people, um, took hearts out, cut balls off, all types of stuff. Um, so in the hood, violence sets authority, so nobody will come mess with you or your girl or your family for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So I was taught to like that to use because they used to bring me on crimes with them. I was a little kid. I'm not gonna go to jail. Put the money or put the jewelry in his pocket. Let him run. Um, so I'm saying to say like violence. Violence in the hood is just different. You know, it's like being in prison. It's the only thing that keeps people off you because eventually somebody gonna want to mess with you for no reason. So
Do you have to
what?
assert that authority through aggression?
Yeah. So my whole life, but I was bullied because I don't want to be violent. You know, it wasn't until like the 6th grade I choked this kid out. I got tired of him, and I remember his veins coming out of his head because that's how intense I was, and I almost was gonna kill him. And then yeah, I was like, I'm gonna make other people feel this. And then I don't want to hurt nobody, but I walk around with a gun, a machete, a knife, and I think I did a gun one time, once or twice. Well, when my boy got robbed and they tried to beat him up and stuff. And the point is, I went to his house and said, "You go to sleep. I'm gonna stay up and be a guard. Not just me, but we would take turns trying to protect him because he lived in a very bad neighborhood. And if they pull up, all right, I'm busting. But I don't want to be in that position. But anyway, I think so. The hood so violence for Black people is just so different. I think and then when police put it on you. And unlike a regular civilian, if you put hands on them, you're wrong. Because the times the police touch me, I couldn't do nothing. But they grab me by my throat, they choking me. One choke slam me. At this point, I was like maybe 20. I weigh like 80 pounds. I was super skinny.
Mm-hmm.
So he just Undertaker choke slam me on concrete in Times Square. Anyway, it's just like, so I get it too, man. It's hard, man, but it's just this dominance thing. I feel like this. All human beings are fighting for control. Control. That's what we all are fighting for, even little babies. Everybody's fighting for some type of control. And then when you oppose my authority, I want to show you I'm more in control. And I think that's where a lot of this shit come from. Just in general, with human beings and the history of the violence of our world, like countries taking over other countries and
well, America's famous for that. That's what they did, isn't it? To be in control, to become the United States of America. That they stole land off people and.
But really,
well, when you look at the Native Americans, and the way they were treated.
Yeah. They said God told them they're supposed to have this land.
Yeah.
That's what they said verbatim. The 6th president, the 1st president, James A. Polk, all of them. God said we're supposed to have this. And then they just took it.
I mean, you see that it starts there, doesn't it? It starts there. It starts with that mentality that, somehow, I mean, I'm not religious, so I don't believe in God, but I do believe in a higher power, like the universe itself.
Something there.
Is
Yeah.
magical. I like you mentioned right at the beginning, slightly digressing, but you mentioned right at the beginning about like the way we can just eat the food from the earth, and the universe knows what it's doing to create the food. We have carbon dioxide, and we have sunshine, and we have the rain from the sky, and the universe does all of that for us. That's magical. The universe has never told anyone to steal anything from anybody else. So like you say, that is it's an excuse, and it's a mentality, and it's a dominance, and it's very animalistic, and that's what happens in the animal world. But unfortunately, if you're a little boy like you were, going back to the story of your life, you were a little boy and you were running around with these gangsters that were family members, some of them, and you were doing things and exposed to things early on, that becomes your norm. So not only have we got the issue of, as I said previously, you know, boys not knowing how to express, and perhaps we're not teaching boys how to deal with their emotions as they come up, but also if that's what your life has been, that is your norm. And on top of that, historically, we see, because of testosterone and because of the animal side of human nature, that there is a drive to be the most dominant. So I guess the way that I, you know, and some of the questions that I've had on Instagram in particular were around, how do you stop it? Like, how do you stop violence? And it's something that I'm really interested in, because I don't believe you can stop it. I believe that you can educate, and I believe that you can give people the choice, i.e., this is what you could have if you didn't choose that lifestyle. But you've also got to understand that if their exposure from a very young age, and let's face it, the most formative years of development are between the ages of 0 to 7, what you see during those years conditions your brain. So we need to change the paradigm, you know, of children that are growing up in areas of poverty, that are seeing a lot of violence, that are seeing a lot of death. It becomes their norm, and we have to change that conditioning. And we have to do that by talking to people. But how do you reach everyone? You can't. It's impossible. So can you eradicate violence? No. Can you change the behavior of one man who decides to beat on one woman and his family? Yes, you can. But the systems don't allow that, because they just lock people away and throw away the key. And they do these very basic programs over here for men that have got abuse problems, i.e. they abuse their families, but it's not enough. And that's why I say at the moment, until we take a really serious stance on it and bring it into education, emotional intelligence, bring that into the system. Let's stop looking at, you know, memorizing algebra, and instead look at teaching people how to be the best version of themselves, and how to understand what's right and wrong, and how to understand that even if you're programmed to see something, believe something because it's your norm, that's not the path you have to follow. And you need to do that in primary school, even in kindergarten over there, you know, before they get to school. We need to be teaching these things all the time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Everything you said is right. I want to add on.
Yeah.
In life, you're not going to get nothing unless you make people fear you. That just is what it is. If you don't want your husband to cheat on you, you got to bring a consequence of, I'm divorcing you, right? If you don't eat well, there's cancer, there's diabetes. So I'm saying that the universe has consequences if you don't work out or whatever. So consequences are important. No different from a reward system is important. I think if we have cultures that show people, or especially men, hey, you do this, the reward for you is greater. So, like, example, if I'm looking at just cheating, what incentive do I have as a man to not cheat on a woman, where as long as I have money, nothing changes? Because if you don't want to be with me, another one will.
Yeah.
But if women came together and said, cheating is wrong, period, and if a man cheats once, he should be ousted from the world as far as getting vagina or whatever.
Yeah.
That would make a huge difference. But because there's no unity amongst femininity on that scale, then if I'm Donald Trump, okay, I'll go through another divorce. Who cares? Because another female gonna want me tomorrow. I got money, and it's so I'm saying like we need reward systems. We need consequence type systems, and that's so. Consequences are the only things that keep things in order. So if you want to stop violence, we have to set an example of like, okay, if you steal, we cut your hands off. If you hit somebody, we hitting you. The way you hurt somebody is the way we government or that society will hurt you. When I was in Mexico, there was a group of men kidnapping kids. I have it on my phone if you want to see it. The point is that the village, I have this on my phone. The point is that the village found those men and burnt them alive, and the police let it go.
Yeah.
In other countries, they don't play. So not that they don't have a system like us in the UK and America, but hey, guess what? If you do something and this town want to do something to you, it's you better be mindful what you're doing unless you're willing to go that hard. So they set them on fire for touching little kids. That's all I'm saying. And then that hopefully sends a message to other people: don't keep touching our kids.
So, I get it, and you've made a very, very good point. In fact, our brain does that naturally for us. You know, the reward system is the dopamine system, and the punishment, as you say, is those diseases like cancer, HIV. You know, the things that we naturally cause within ourselves and the way our body responds to certain diseases. And COVID. Yeah. I mean, you know, if you don't follow these simple rules, then you're more likely to catch COVID. So, being healthy and doing the right thing. So you're right. We are conditioned, designed, developed to have this natural reward system and a natural punishment system within our own brains, our nervous system, and physical selves. And I think the outside world reflects that. And you only have to look at the animal kingdom and chimpanzees and, you know, lions, tigers, and bears to see how it all works. The problem being is that whereas all of these animals and us too, when we were, you know, evolving into the human, all of that's fine because they don't have the same level of emotion that we have. The problem that we have is that our brain is so definitely conditioned and developed around experience, and our emotions. So, for example, what we think is what we feel, and how we feel is how we behave. Now, if we think that it's right to kidnap children, we're going to go and kidnap children. If that's all we've ever seen, if we think it's right to burn people alive, we're going to go and burn people alive because that's all we've ever seen. And we've spoken about this previously when it comes to, you know, sexual desire and sexual behaviours, that you tend to be whatever your local community is, wherever that is in the world. You tend to follow that. You tend to respond to that. You tend to adapt to that. So this is where the answering a question like how do we stop violence, you can't, because in some, you know, even in some African tribes, the way they deal with things is so different to how we deal with it in New York, London, you know, all of these places. So you can't stop violence, but what you have to do is we have to change the reward and we have to change the punishment where we can, in your communities, in your villages. That's where it starts. You can't look at the bigger picture. You have to go to that village mentality and you have to work within your local communities. That's where you see real change, and that has a widespread effect. So
at the end of the day, we're all chasing attention. Attention from mom, attention from dad, attention from wherever. With that attention, you're seeking social status.
Yes.
Then you go by your community and say, well, what gives a social status? So I'll say for Black kids in the hood, we're taught just through how life works. It's like, look at rap music. We're the only culture that talks about killing each other, fucking your bitch, and this and this and that, and I'm saying all that to say, the record labels reward you. They'll give you $1 million record deal if you talk about murdering your own. No other country gets that. And then if you don't snitch, you go to jail. The hood gives you a reward by when you come back. I guess you're a real man or whatever. You get real nigga points. I don't know. So what I'm saying is that yes, then our culture goes, well, that's why we got to keep doing this, because if I'm a gang member, my points go up with my friends by murdering you and doing this to you, and that part. And the point is that we're chasing social status. So then, even with females, if now if a female is taught a man is somebody who provides, nobody, because I know that's how I was taught. Nobody ever said, well, how does that look? So if you're selling drugs, it don't matter, because you told me I'm a man, and a man is someone who pays the bills. However he goes about paying the bills, Pablo Escobar, whoever, that's on them. But that becomes the problem, because the reality of the world is that, and I hate to say it like this, we don't value quote unquote good men and good women. And good women.
Do you know, interestingly enough, though, when you speak one-to-one with people, as I do, you know, and let's look at women then. You know, women talk about this man and that man. Why is he doing this and why is he doing that and why can't he be with just me and blah blah blah, and they take everything so personally. But I always come back down to the conditioning and what he's seen and what he's learned and what society now says and the options that are available. But also more this, why, and I say this to all the women, why are you carrying on picking that man? All you're doing is picking the same man in a different body, because that's your conditioning, that's your belief that a man acts and behaves this way. And now you're asking me why you keep ending up with these relationships, because you're choosing it, because your belief system is that a man behaves this way, whether that's through the music that you hear, the music videos that you watch, the films you watch, whatever. You get what you focus on. So if you focus on those things, and you focus on those things like alone, you will end up with the drug dealer guy who beats you up and goes around screwing every girl that moves, because that's what your desire is, because you believe that's a real man. I remember going back many years ago, just after the Second World War, when I was 15. My very good friend at the time, she used to say to me, "I want a gangster. I want a man that beats me." And she actually said those words out loud. But that's what she wanted, because that's what she was seeing at the time. We're going back to the 90s now, early 90s.
Yeah.
That's what she wanted. And I was like, mate, what is wrong with you? Why do you want a man that's going to beat you up? That's ridiculous. But that's what she was focusing on. So that's what she wanted. So it's important for everyone to know. I think women, men, children, you can change the game just by refocusing your attention. If you want a good man, if you want to believe there are good men out there, look for them, because they exist. But that's boring. And that's the problem. People want excitement, because we spoke about the reward system earlier. Not only are certain men and certain women rewarded with cash, jewelry, whatever, but we're also rewarded with the adrenaline, the dopamine, the excitement that naturally occurs within our own brains, and the release of those neurotransmitters and those hormones. So actually, we like that feeling. It's like a high. So when I was getting these questions on Instagram, I wasn't answering all of them because I didn't have time, but I kept saying, you get what you focus on. And if you're addicted to that process, you're going to keep going back. So violence isn't just the act itself, it's the whole process around it. It's the conditioning around it. But on that note, and we haven't got long left to fit it all in, but on that note, I just wanted to ask you a question. The guys that you know, and I can speak for some of the men that I know as well, do you think that because they don't know another way, because they weren't taught another way when they were, in kindergarten or very early on in school, do you think it's just that they stick to this way, that gangster lifestyle, that kind of aggression, that violence, simply because they don't know there is another way of doing it, i.e. they're not having those mentors or those advocates or those guides?
I don't believe that, because even if it's not at home, it's on TV. It's somewhere. As a kid, I'm taught Sesame Street. I'm taught Barney. Like these kiddie shows. They teach you manners and they teach you stuff. I wasn't born up in that environment, and I didn't follow it, because I meant to say earlier, when my uncles were doing the stealing, and my uncles used to rape girls in my house. I knew this wasn't wrong. If I hear somebody screaming a certain way, as a little babies know feelings too, I mean, they don't understand why they're feeling it, but they know it. So I'm saying that to say, these people, at the end of the day, you're doing what gets you the most attention, and that's why you want to be a gangster, because this person believes that it gets you the most attention. And remember, it's all about being a rebel and about being in control, and gangsters look like they're in control because they're always taking instead of asking. So I could see how a female likes that form of dominance. And then that man says, well, this is dominant. But at the end of the day, it doesn't lead nowhere healthy. But I will say, if you like getting beat up or shitted on or pissed on or whatever the hell you like doing, ain't nothing wrong with it. Just be real with people. Don't care if they judge you. And you're going to find that person. Because I found people I like with the kinky things I'm into, whatever that is. Because there are people that are into that. I saw this female on, I thought it was just one thing, but I bumped into her on Twitter. She likes to get beat up. Meaning, like, so if a guy's doing her doggy style, she wants her rib, like she wants him to really rock her ribs. Little things like that. Everybody got their thing, man. Whatever, But just find people who are into that. And if somebody says no, don't take it as like, oh, I'm not worth anything. Just everybody not into everything. And then going back to what you said, the only thing I would disagree on a bit is that I look at Martin Luther King, a man who fought for peace and died of violence. Gandhi, a man who fought for peace and died of violence. It's not always what you focus on. I think we gotta be realistic in our world. My grandmother said, I don't care how good you are. Somebody is just not gonna like you. It just is what it is, and be ready for that day if somebody wants to challenge you on that. But it is what it is.
I agree to a certain extent with everything you said, because obviously where you find peace, there will always be someone that's coming along to say, no, we want to be the dominant ones, we want the attention, so we're going to kill the peaceful man and we're going to take that power back. But I do wonder if, like you mentioned there about, you know, some women that like to be beaten up, and I mentioned my friend there, and I've got friends myself that have lived a life of crime and violence and got you know, murders and rapes and all those kind of things, and they're very troubled people. And I would say this to you, Scott, as an added layer, is that one person in particular I'm thinking of who I absolutely love dearly. I've known him from the age of 4 years old, and I would say he's like a brother to me. But he has murdered people, he has raped people, he's been exceptionally violent towards women, and he's been in and out of prison his whole entire life. And I still love him because I see the small child in him that I knew from when we were very, you know, young. But I believe there's some brain damage because he was very badly abused. In terms of, you know, what people did to him, but also what he was witnessing. So his brain, look, if we look at the neurological pathways, which is really important here, the way the neurological pathways form and the way the neurocircuits form means that you've got this internal GPS inside your brain that is driving you 90% of the time. So 10% of you is thinking consciously, 90% of you is working on that internal GPS, those neurocircuits, those neuro pathways. And so it's the most comfortable place to be, even if you say, like you mentioned there, and you're right to say it, you know, there's always kids programs on, there's always this sort of like happy thing going on in the background on the TV or whatever on the computer. But unfortunately, when there is that internal GPS program, like a sat nav, it will take you in the direction of the programming. You have to be consciously aware of that programming, and you also have to be brave enough to step outside the world that you already know. Because there are men like my friend that would not exist very well for a short period of time, at least relatively, in doing things the right way. It's just not his world. It's not his people. He doesn't really know people outside of his own zone, which is drugs, which is aggression, which is violence, which is rape, which is better. He doesn't know people outside of that, so he wouldn't be conforming. He'd be a lone soldier, and that would leave him open to attack, because obviously the world he's got into means that there's always going to be people after his head, so he has to stay in that zone. So you are right that even if you teach people, but this is why I think it's essential to teach the boys, and not just once or twice, you know, like going into the school for 6 weeks on a program. It needs to be consistent. It needs to be it, because if we don't do that now in the 21st century, and we don't go, right, this is important, this should be part of education, how to start a business, how to make money, how to have healthy relationships, how to treat each other. If those things aren't there consistently in the schools, forget about learning 12 languages, forget about mathematical equations. That's not going to get, you can get all of that on your phone now. What we need to do is we need to look at this emotional development, because in the end, if you look at progress, so you look at, you mentioned Martin Luther King there, you look at progress within, it's still got a long way to go, particularly in America, but the progress in America in terms of racial equality, yes, it's still way far behind where it should, but there is progress from Martin Luther King's days and Malcolm X. If you look at, particularly with the gay community and drag queens, there is progress because the education is happening, but it's just not enough. And I feel that there would be a section of people that would benefit massively from early education, early psychology, if it was implemented correctly. But you're right, to say that violence can be over, no, we're animals and you will never hit everybody, and you'll never educate everybody, and some people just won't want to do it because they have to step outside that conformity and outside of that comfort zone. But it's a fascinating, we could literally talk all day on this, and luckily, just as a point to be made, we're going to do this podcast every other week. We're going to try and get a whole series of however many shows, you know, and eventually when COVID's over, it'd be good to take it on the road, because I actually think that audience participation would be hugely beneficial to the conversation, to open it up.
We will take it on the road. We
will. And once we've got the first couple of these off the hot plate and we get them published and get them out there, it'd be good to invite guests in, because I think again, that participation is essential really to keep that conversation flowing. But to be fair, Scott, you are so interesting, insightful. Your opinions from me have always been hugely beneficial. In fact, you've educated me so much, and I say it pretty much every time I talk to you, whether it be on a podcast or in person, because I've definitely grown as a person from having the relationship with you that I have. So I know that people listening to you will grow and develop as well.
Well, you killed this whole thing. I didn't.
No, you did.
Well, we'll see. We'll see in the comments.
No, you did. Brilliant. You are a genius, and that's why I want to do this with you, because there is a genius about you, and you come from a very cultural point of view, which is essential. Because I could look at this from the development of the brain all day long, but what you've said is very valid. You know, sometimes people don't want to step outside what they know. They can have all the education in the world and they want to stay there.
And let's do everything to keep them there, because we don't need them infiltrating other people's worlds and bringing violence to you and your world, you know.
That's true. You know, sometimes there is a section. What we've got to do though is, I think, because of what's happening particularly in New York and Chicago and all those places, is, you know, it's scary even for people like you. It's a scary world, and we, like you say, we don't want that to be the case. We want keep that in a corner and let the rest of us live a productive, successful, happy lifestyle.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a pleasure.
Yes, Ella, the boss lady. We here. This is episode 1. Slow motion with the potion. We're gonna figure this out in due time, people. So, like, get it excited and have some strippers on. Next time I'll have an opener. Have some strippers. And then
As long as I don't have to take my clothes off. That's
no. I got some hoochies. Some good coochies.
I know you have.
Some good. Wow.
Enjoy the show tonight, and keep safe, mate, because I do worry about you at the minute.
Oh, thank you. Listen, I've been alive for 35 years, because trust me, I'm one of the most paranoid people, watching everything, and if somebody pull up on me, it'll be hard. And I grew up with killers. I already know how to killer things.
Well, do you know what? That's a benefit at the moment, because you know, there's plenty of that going on, isn't there?
Hell yeah, and it is what it is, you know. Like, I mean, I hate to be vulgar, but like Cameron said and paid in full, niggas die every day. B, you'll be alright. And I just be like, oh, it's sad, but it's the truth, you know. So you gonna be good, right?
You're gonna be good, because you, like you say, you know what you do. But I do worry about you, because obviously I care a great deal about you, and to know that you're in the midst of it all is a bit of a concern. But I know you're strong, and I know you know what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And I worry about you guys too, but I know y'all safe. Listen, if I ever die, I always tell people, just know I'm gonna die on my feet before I die on my knees. I'm not begging no man for my life. He can suck my dick. Yeah, that's it.
Well, on that note, I think that's a good place to end.
All right, love. Peace and hair grease.
Sending you all the love.
Okay.
See you next time.
Okay, bye-bye, Queen.
Bye-bye.
How's it work?
Bye-bye. I'm just going to press end.
Okay.
All right, beauty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Press.